The USDA announced that it has frozen federal funding for certain the state of Maine, educational programs over that state's refusal to comply with Title IX protection of female student athletes. The governor of Maine is Janet Mills, and she has been adamant about keeping gender-confused males in girls' sports. But at the same time, the Trump administration is just as determined to uphold the lawful nature of protecting female student athletes under Title IX. So, will these frozen funds impact Maine's decisions on all this situation? And what do the people of Maine, in fact, what do they have to say about the whole situation? Well, here to discuss this is State Representative of Maine, Laurel Libby. In fact, she's got her own battle taking place over the transgender athlete issue herself. Representative Libby, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. First of all, let's start with the latest on your case against the Speaker of the House here. Can you give us some details, first of all, on what your case is all about and where it currently stands?
5 weeks ago, I was censured for speaking the truth and highlighting that there are biological males participating in girls' sports here in Maine. And what that meant is that I am no longer allowed to speak or vote, represent my constituents on the House floor. And so we're 5 weeks in. I filed a lawsuit on behalf of myself and my constituents. And today we had our hearing in federal district court. So now we're waiting on the ruling from that judge. And we're hoping, given the harm being perpetrated on my constituents, that this will be a timely resolution and the courts will see fit to ensure that I get my voice and my vote back.
Yeah, I think it's important for our viewers and listeners to hear that again. Some of them may not have heard this last time you were on, but it's a head scratcher to me how this could possibly be happening in the United States. And again, hats off to you. Thank you so much for standing for truth and for pushing back against this unconstitutional censoring of your representation of your constituents. So thank you for that brief update. All right, if we can, let's talk now about the USDA and the announcement that they have basically saying that Maine, the state of Maine, must demonstrate compliance with Title IX or they're going to have a lot of funds frozen. And the only way to reverse the frozen funds is to make corrective actions. So is there any indication whatsoever that Governor Mills might be swayed by this?
I would love to tell you that common sense is going to prevail in Maine and that Governor Mills is going to follow federal law and ensure that Title IX is upheld. But that would require a level of humility I don't think we're going to see here. So I think this will go to the courts. There's so much at stake. The USDA has frozen funds. Secretary Rollins was very clear in her letter to Governor Mills in saying, this is the start and there's more to come. And at the same time, tempering that with, this is in your hands. As soon as you stop discriminating against Maine women and girls, your federal funds will be reinstated.
Your House Minority Leader has described the situation as the governor literally holding the schools in Maine and the whole educational system as hostage. What is your assessment of the overall situation? Would you describe it that way?
I would say that's accurate. We've got a very activist small percentage, including Governor Mills and the Democrat majority, who are so extreme and have this stance that the majority of Mainers don't agree with. And that's really where we're at. They, along with the Maine Principals Association and several school districts in Maine, really are holding the entire rest of the state hostage with this extreme stance that insists on allowing biological males to participate in girls' sports, regardless of the consequences. And these are severe pending consequences to lose potentially hundreds of millions of dollars for Maine students.
Yeah, and it seems to me that the pressure continues to mount. I mean, now we have the Departments of Education as well as Health and Human Services. They're also now accusing Maine of Title IX violations. So what do you make of all the pressure that's being applied? Is it going to make an impact?
It certainly is going to make an impact. I'm hopeful that at some point we will get enough pressure from the federal government and from the people of Maine, whether it's through the courts, through the electoral process next year, to make real change and ensure that common sense prevails for the long term here, on behalf of both girls and our students. I don't see resolution coming through Governor Mills and the Democrat majority, unfortunately.
It's stunning. You mentioned the majority of the citizens there in Maine are opposing the governor on this. In fact, a University of New Hampshire survey that I saw said 64% of Mainers don't think that the transgender athletes should be allowed to compete in girls' sports. Do the Democrats there just simply not care?
The Democrats in power, and I want to be really careful to distinguish there because I've heard from many Democrats across the state of Maine who don't agree with what Augusta Democrats, the folks in power in our capital, with what they're doing. They don't agree with this stance. And so 2/3 of Mainers, that includes a vast number of Democrats who think that this agenda is crazy. They don't agree with this denial of basic biology, and they want to see common sense restored. And the folks in Augusta simply are not listening to the 2/3 of Mainers that agree.
Well, and good point making that distinction between the two. It's fair for you to make that distinction. We've got just less than a minute, but Republicans there are trying to remove gender identity as a protected class. Do you think that'll be successful?
I'm a little bit of a pessimist on this one. I don't think it's political reality that we will see that pass. It should. Maine people would like to see that removed, and that's the mechanism that we would need to see pass in order to change this policy at the state level. I still think resolution is going to have to come through the courts at the federal level. And unfortunately, Mainers are probably going to feel some pain before we can change who is in the majority in Augusta and resolve this issue for the long term.
Well, pain is sometimes necessary to get to the right conclusion. Thank you so much, Maine State Representative Laurel Libby. You're a hero. We are grateful for you taking a stand. Thank you for joining us on Washington Watch.
Thank you so much for having me.